During the spring and autumn period, there were many tyrants who constantly fought for power and profit, slaughtering one another. Among them was King Kang of Song, a tyrant who had seized the state of Song from his own elder brother. To satisfy his own luxury and pleasures, he often sent troops everywhere to seize common people and force them into hard labor. He also had beautiful women taken from ordinary households everywhere, dragged into the palace and abused to death. Under such savage rule, many common people were driven to the point where they could no longer survive. At that time, in a small village in Song, there were two children who studied together in a private village school. The boy was called Han Ping, and the girl was called Zhen Fu. They grew up together and had been very close since childhood. A few years later, both had grown to adulthood and happily became husband and wife. This young couple, united in affection, were deeply in love on their wedding night. But Han Ping's widowed mother was already planning to make her only son go out quickly and seek official office. Driven by dreams of rank, fame, and wealth, his mother forced Han Ping to hurry to the capital for the examinations. Though there was endless sorrow in their parting, Han Ping still had his beloved wife, through tears, pack his things for him. He wanted to throw himself into the service of the powerful, so that his status might rise above that of ordinary commoners, is less than Hashom. 5 is greater than. He willingly left his own home, greedy to become a parasitic lackey. And so Zhen Fu was left to keep a lonely room, living through days of desolation, solitude, and hardship. Han Ping reached the capital of Song and exhausted himself, showing off his learning and striving for fame and office. At last he won someone's favor, was taken in, and given a minor official post. He became even more loyal and hardworking, serving his masters day and night in the business of ruling the people. Later, he rose to become a close attendant of the king, having to appear before him every morning at court. Yet every night when he returned to his room, he still thought of the wife far away from whom he had now been separated for 6 years. Zhen Fu's days were no easier. She, too, stitched all her longing, stitch by stitch, into a letter on silk. Hearing that old Fan, the husband of their neighbor Fenggu, was about to go to the capital on business, Zhen Fu thought of entrusting him with a letter. She and the neighbor Fenggu asked old Fan to take the letter to Han Ping. Fortunately, old Fan did not fail her. He placed the letter into Han Ping's hands. When Han Ping received it, his longing only deepened. Scenes from before their parting came back to him. What has become of these 3 years of longing? Only at midnight do we meet in dreams. The green hills are far, the white clouds are vast, and the one I love is far away. He read it again and again, thinking and thinking, until he forgot to eat, forgot to sleep, and forgot the passing of time. Without realizing it, he had pined away the whole night. Now it was time to go attend the king at court. After being awakened by a servant boy, he hurriedly dressed and tucked the letter into his sleeve pocket before leaving. After a whole night of painful brooding, Han Ping was dazed and absent-minded when he appeared before the king. In a moment of confusion before the king, the letter slipped from his sleeve pocket and fell to the ground. At once, the treacherous minister Liang Bo picked it up and presented it to King Kang. King Kang accused Han Ping of disloyalty and impropriety. No matter how Han Ping knelt and begged, the king had him thrown into prison. King Kang examined the letter carefully and realized that it had been embroidered by an exceptionally beautiful and intelligent woman. He also learned that this woman was Han Ping's wife, and so he planned to force Han Ping to surrender her. Liang Bo went to the prison and demanded that Han Ping offer up his wife to atone for his crime before King Kang. Han Ping refused and suffered the cruel punishment of branding, which disfigured his face. King Kang then came up with a second plan. He sent Liang Bo with soldiers to Han Ping's home to seize the woman by force. Liang Bo led a large force, swaggering arrogantly as he headed toward Han Ping's hometown. These lackeys, throwing their weight around under borrowed power, naturally took the chance to rob the common people along the way, is less than has hon. 5 hash is greater than. After several days of rapine, plunder, and abduction on the road, they finally arrived at Han Ping's village deep in the night. This calamity, descending out of nowhere, shattered the lonely night of the empty house. Zhen Fu knew well that she ought to hide. But the government troops were really just bandits, smashing through the door in broad violence. Liang Bo deceived Han Ping's mother, saying he had brought a letter entrusted to him personally by Han Ping. He claimed he needed to meet Han Ping's wife face to face in order to deliver an important token and message. Of course, this was a lie, and of course, they were not deceived. Liang Bo immediately turned hostile and drew his sword to threaten them. Hearing how dire the situation had become, Zhen Fu had no choice but to step forward and risk everything to relieve the crisis. She denounced Liang Bo's absurd rudeness and his stream of lies. What was the use of putting on such a false face to deceive people? Once Zhen Fu had torn off their mask, the bandits had only one method left: robbery by force. They dragged her away. This was the kind of deed carried out by the king whom Han Ping and his mother had once admired and sought to serve. Liang Bo also seized a number of other women from neighboring homes. Among the unfortunate victims was Feng Gu, Zhenfu's close friend. After several days on the road, they were delivered into the capital of Song. The palace gates were like the sea once one entered. One would never come out again. Palace attendants crowded Zhenfu into the great hall, and her beauty at once stole King Kang's very soul. King Kang's despicable behavior filled Zhenfu with hatred, and even those upright elder ministers could not bear to watch. But the tyrant would never allow his servants to speak against him. He had the old minister who stepped forward to remonstrate killed on the spot. Then he shot dead with an arrow another minister whose displeasure had shown on his face. Though Zhenfu would not yield, she could not escape either, and was imprisoned deep within the palace chambers. Liang Bo ordered that a maidservant who had been abducted at the same time should attend her, and a cup of fragrant tea was brought in. That maid happened to be Feng Gu. The moment they saw each other, both were stunned, and the jade cup fell and shattered on the floor. King Kang wanted to kill Feng Gu, and this forced Zhenfu to plead with him to spare her. Seizing the chance to play the benefactor, King Kang granted the favor and told Feng Gu to comfort and persuade Zhenfu. Pretending he was about to leave, he ordered everyone else away, leaving only Feng Gu with Zhenfu to talk. Not knowing it was a trap, Feng Gu quietly urged Zhenfu to assassinate King Kang. But every word had been overheard by King Kang. Feng Gu simply pointed at the tyrant and cursed him fiercely to his face. The result, of course, was that Feng Gu died a heroic death beneath the tyrant's sword. Liang Bo then came up with another scheme. He advised King Kang to take Zhenfu to Qingling Terrace for an outing, hoping to make her change her mind and submit. Qingling Terrace towered high outside the city. Below it was the place where criminals of Song were sentenced to hard labor. Escorted under guard to the top of the terrace, Zhenfu found an excuse to go to the railing and look down below. Just then, Han Ping happened to be doing forced labor there, wearing prison clothes and feeding horses. At a single glance, Zhenfu recognized Han Ping and cried out in shock. Han Ping also lifted his head and saw her. Han Ping hid his branded and disfigured face behind horse fodder as he tried to speak with Zhenfu in the wild wind of the open plain. Their words could not be heard clearly, so Zhenfu bit her finger and wrote a blood letter on a silk sash. All her bitterness and suffering, all the grief and hatred that had built up over 6 years, she poured out in blood. When she finished, She tied the blood letter to an arrow shaft and shot it into the ground near Han Ping. Han Ping pulled the arrow from the ground, untied the silk, and saw a page full of blood and tears. Seeking high office and fame, I have ended only with my face ruined for nothing, and have brought suffering upon my beloved wife. After reading it, Han Ping was overcome with grief and filled with remorse. He had ruined Zhen Fu's whole life. He could only use death to free himself from his sorrow, and use death as his apology to Zhen Fu. When Zhen Fu saw that Han Ping had killed himself, she was driven into even more frantic grief and weeping. She wanted to throw herself down from the terrace and end her life as well, but the people around her seized and stopped her. Taking advantage of the moment, King Kang urged her to forget her dead husband and remarry him as his queen. Zhen Fu knew that at such a moment she had no freedom, so she merely pretended to agree. She asked King Kang to allow her 3 cups of wine with which to mourn her dead husband, and he agreed. Who could have thought that our dream of flying wing to wing like Mandarin ducks would come to nothing? You lost your life in pursuit of office. Now I too will go with you into the underworld. After the last cup of wine, while no one was on guard, she leapt from the terrace and killed herself. Thus, this loving husband and wife were both driven to death by a despotic tyrant. King Kang flew into a rage and at once killed all the servants who had accompanied him. Only Liang Bo managed to escape. Cowering, Liang Bo picked up a strip of silk that Zhen Fu had left behind and hurried to show it to King Kang. On it was written a request that the king permit her body and Han Ping's to be buried together. Furious, King Kang ordered that the 2 bodies be buried on opposite banks of a small river, determined to keep them longing for one another across the water. And so the 2 fresh graves faced each other from opposite banks on the desolate riverside. After some days, a small tree sprang up from each grave, each growing toward the opposite shore. The 2 trees gradually grew larger, their branches and leaves stretching over the river and intertwining with each other. Before long, this strange sight had fully formed. Many people came to see it, and everyone called them the Trees of Longing. News of this strange event spread far and wide. Liang Bo also went to see them, then returned and reported it to King Kang. King Kang personally led Liang Bo and many soldiers out to the countryside to look at the Trees of Longing. The more King Kang looked, the more jealous he became, and he immediately ordered the soldiers to cut both trees down. Once the Trees of Longing were felled, a stream of white vapor rose from each root. From each stream of white vapor rushed out a mandarin duck, and together the pair beat their wings and flew up into the sky. Everyone cried out in astonishment, which only made King Kang even more furious. He grabbed a bow and arrows and shot 3 times in succession at the pair of ducks. Only the 3rd arrow struck a single feather. By then, the pair had already flown far, far away.